All right, well, very quickly, I'll just have to see where the hell the audio's gone. If the videos didn't play, that's a problem, because that means that probably more likely than not, this is not going to have any audio. That's problematic. Because the immune system of a senior citizen. Yeah, no, fair enough. I literally have like an hour, maybe an hour 20 if I push it. So we're not going to get through everything. Okay, the sound now there, that's the main thing. I'm extremely hot though. Well, why thank you. That's probably StreamYard altering the I'll pull it back a little bit. Hear me just fine? Lovely. All right. Anyway, point is, I've got like not a lot of time. So let's get stuck straight into it. We're picking back up with Dr. Michael Wolf. We had a break for some reason. I think it was the mid-morning break, actually. We're not going to get through all of it today because even if we manage to get through the first hour, we've got lunch and then the rest of it. So I'm just going to have to pick it up tomorrow and hopefully we can get through things. Audio is hot. I can never freaking win, honestly. Played at 1.5, been following along at 2.25. Well, we'll see how they sound. All right, and we'll go from there.
Here, you all set, Dr. Wolf?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Wolf, before we get into laboratory test B, I failed to ask you, were you compensated or was ARCA paid following the proceeding last year for any of the time?
Yes, last year.
Last
yes.
year?
Correct, yes.
Do you know how much that was?
From what I recall, I think it was around $20,000.
Was ARCA paid by the defense, your initial testing, the initial analysis we talked about earlier this morning, was ARCA paid by the defense for any of that?
No, not the report testing, none of that.
Okay. What were you paid for last year related to the first proceeding?
My time to appear at the proceeding.
Travel?
Correct, travel, testimony. Okay. Yes, sir.
So the form, Mr. Jackson?
Sure. What about now? Have you been paid any additional sums by the defense specifically for your undertaking that you're testifying about today?
Yes.
About how much have you been paid?
I think when I spoke to a county, I think they indicated it was around $50,000.
Okay.
No,
let's talk about laboratory test B, as in Bravo. If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
What was different about lab test B as opposed to lab test A?
So the tests were essentially identical aside from the speed increase going from 10 up to 17.
Okay. Let's take a look at the next slide. Just so I'm clear, Doctor, I want to make sure I'm on the same slide as you. Is this slide 35 pursuant to your notes?
This is slide 36.
36, got it. Okay. We can be a little bit more brief, I think, because is this similar to the 10-mile-an-hour test, just with increased velocity?
Correct.
What about the purple hued taillight on the right? What is that?
So that is a thermal image depicting the temperature profile of the right taillight that was tested.
And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to note that the average temperature profile of the taillight here in this test was approximately 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
Is that below freezing?
It is, yes.
And the ATD, the test dummy, if you will?
Yes.
Is it also clothed?
Correct, yes. You may notice a difference in the sweatshirt color. We put on a new sweatshirt in this test.
Was it also an exact replica of the sweatshirt at issue worn by John O'Keefe? How did it compare to the sweatshirt that was worn by John O'Keefe?
It was made by the same company and had the same material blend as the previous test and the one that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So this will be a video. You will see, much like you did in the other one, where the taillight will be accelerated up to 17 miles an hour, impact the arm. And one of the things you'll see is actually an artifact of the test, if you will, where the taillight, due to the fact that the impactor stops at the end of the stroke, that force actually causes it to decouple from that polyurethane foam that we use to adhere the two.
What do you mean by decouple? What does that mean?
So, as I mentioned, it once the linear impactor reaches the end of its stroke, it stops instantaneously, and the force of that stop just caused where we adhered the two together, just caused it to detach, basically break away. So in essence, it doesn't matter because we only care about that. Remember, we're talking about that short duration of time, that 10 milliseconds. So once it breaks, it's already reached a common velocity to the taillight.
Okay. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide, please? What do you know about this impact?
So one of the things you'll see is kind of that dust cloud that you see. Again, that's all the particulates from the expanding foam that we use. So that's kind of what you see in the background there, kind of going over kind of the arm and the taillight there.
Do you note more damage or less damage to the taillight at 17 miles an hour versus the 10 mile an hour test?
There is more damage, yes.
Let's go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So you're looking at a top-down view from the high-speed camera. You'll see the taillight enter from the left, impacting the arm at about 17 miles per hour.
Okay, go ahead and play it. Can you describe the decoupling that's shown here?
Absolutely. So as you can see, where the two are basically married together, right? It's kind of actually coming back together now. So that bond that we had, right? This is the most effective way that we could mount it to the impactor. It just became detached due to the force of that impactor stopping at the end of the stroke.
Understood. Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So in this slide, you're looking at another high-speed video. This is just a side view. Again, you're going to see the taillight enter the frame from the left, impacting the arm at 17 miles per hour.
Is this in slow motion as well?
This is in slow motion, correct? Not real time.
Okay. What do you note in terms of the deflection on the arm?
The arm, as we saw in the previous one, is accelerated up, so it's moving out at roughly a common velocity with what the impact speed was.
And what did you note about the damage to the taillight?
It was more significant than the 10 mile an hour test, which again, there was very minimal damage to that, where several fragments of that red outer lens fractured as well as the clear lens.
Okay, next slide. And what is this depicting?
This is extracted frames from the previous video just showing right at contact, during contact, and post contact.
Next slide, please. What is this a photograph of?
This photograph is depicting the damage to the taillight at the conclusion of the test, where again, it's missing fragments of the outer red lens. I will note that the interior diffusers and plastic components are intact in this test.
When you say intact, what do you mean?
They're not damaged or broken.
At all?
Correct, at all.
Next slide, please. What is that a picture of?
Another photograph showing the taillight post-test. Again, no damage to the underlying diffusers in terms of being cracked, shattered, or broken.
And what did you note in terms of the damage to the outer acrylic, the red piece?
It broke into a few fragments, and I think on the next slide, I depict those in a photograph.
Let's take a look at that. What is that?
So this is a photograph depicting the collection of the fragments post-test. I will note there's one clear piece, one red piece, another clear piece, and there is one more red piece in this bag. So the outer lens broke into approximately 4 pieces in the 17 mile per hour test.
4 pieces, not 46 pieces. The funny thing was, I was watching all over X how a whole bunch of people were like, oh, well, this definitely proves that the car hit him because it was similar damage. It's not fucking similar. But, okay, no, you know what? Fine. There are certain similarities. But it's not an analog for what happened.
And I'll point out one other thing just because you can see it in the photograph. This is that 3D printed bracket that we used to bolt it onto the linear impactor with the foam on the other side that mounted it to the taillight.
Thank you for that. Next slide, please. What is this a picture of, or pictures of?
This is a side-by-side comparison showing a depiction of the 17 mile an hour test impact to the test taillight, comparing it to that of the subject taillight.
Were you able to reach any conclusions or opinions as to whether or not the damage to the subject taillight on the right is consistent with striking an arm at 17 miles per hour?
It's inconsistent from a damage perspective.
What's the basis of that opinion?
The test that I just showed you all.
Was that testing that we just talked about conducted in accordance with the scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies that you've earlier described?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 17 miles per hour?
No.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Slide 45, please. What is this?
You're looking at photographs post-test of the sweatshirt that the ATD was wearing at the time of the impact.
Is this the 17 mile an hour impact?
Correct, yes.
Did you note any defects in the fabric of the right arm?
There were no punctures, holes, or fraying of the material during this impact test.
Based on this testing that you conducted in this case, is the damage that you saw of the shirt that John O'Keefe was wearing consistent or inconsistent with the shirt that's on the ATD?
It was inconsistent compared to the sweatshirt that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing.
Based on that, do you have an opinion or conclusion as to whether or not the damage on Mr. O'Keefe's clothing was consistent with being struck by the right rear taillight at 17 miles per hour?
It is inconsistent.
Next slide, please. What is this graph depicting?
So going back to these terms that we've talked about, this is the acceleration trace of the 17 mile an hour impact test. And you can see that we reach a peak of acceleration at around 5 milliseconds, and that's at about almost 270 Gs.
You said 270 Gs?
Correct.
Or 217?
270.
Thanks.
70.
Did that have any significance on your analysis?
Yes.
What was that?
Well, we can use that to estimate, obviously we can integrate that to get the speed, but we can also estimate the force applied to the taillight with that information.
Can we go to the next slide, please? What is the delta V as it relates to the 17-mile-an-hour lab test?
So you can see, again, the arm initially at rest is accelerated up, increasing in speed, and then reaches just about 16 miles per hour, so reaching nearly a common velocity with the taillight at about 8 milliseconds in time.
Next slide, please. Did you conduct additional tests other than the 2 lab tests that we've talked about?
Yes, sir.
Describe just in general, and then we'll talk in more specifics. What were the tests that you undertook after the lab tests?
So we conducted 2 tests with a suspended ATD arm that was impacted by an exemplar 2021 Lexus LX570. We then conducted a test where the arm was then attached to a test dummy, and then our final test was a full-on impact to a test dummy.
Can we go to slide 48, please? What are we looking at in this slide?
This is the exemplar 2021 Lexus LX570 that was utilized during this test program.
Was this the same vehicle that was utilized in all the tests, C, D, E, and F?
Correct, yes.
If we could go to
It's funny that they were able to do that without having to spend, or sorry, should I say, be paid for what, almost $400,000.
slide 49, the next slide. What's depicted in this photograph?
Well, so there's a number of things here, so I'll try to point them all out. So obviously, we talked about just now the Lexus here, the exemplar vehicle. We have a forklift that was hoisted up that ultimately was suspending the arm. I think I have an additional photograph that shows it close up. But the arm was suspended from the forklift at the correct height to interact with the taillight. We have our high-speed cameras set up under this umbrella. There's another one over here. Another thing you'll note is we brought out the chest freezer when we were installing these in the Lexus to, again, keep them at that steady state temperature for as long as possible.
If we could go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at in this photograph?
I'm sorry, I just had this flash to that the meme. Get you a woman who can do both. This guy's professional, but will sit there and giggle about making a fucking potato cannon. Get you a guy that can do both.
So this is the approximate position that we plan to have contact occur in these tests. So as you can see, the forearm is in contact with the liftgate and the quarter panel taillight along with the elbow.
Why did you choose this configuration for the arm, the forearm, the hand, the elbow?
It was based upon my review of Dr. Welcher's work, and that he did through his static and dynamic test or ping test that this is how the arm was roughly oriented when the alleged contact occurred.
What were you trying to replicate in positioning the arm this direction, this way, as it relates to the SUV?
Well, I think as I stated earlier, it was to understand, okay, let's get beyond just simple geometry aligning things. What happens to the arm, right? What are the accelerations? What's the damage, right? What we want to answer some of those other questions that Dr. Welcher didn't answer.
Does this?
So I'm going to strike the last part of that answer.
Does this configuration align with your understanding of Dr. Welcher's alignment of the arm as it relates to the vehicle?
Okay. Assisting.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sidebar.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I inquire?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. This may be self-explanatory. What was the speed of your first test out in the field?
15 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in these 2 photographs?
So on the left is a photograph of the installed preconditioned taillights just after the install, and on the right is a thermal image of that. And if I may just point out with the temperature. So one of the things you may see here is that due to the reflective chrome here, this is just an artifact of that being really reflective. So when we look at the average temperature profile of the taillight for this test, the average was approximately 17 degrees Fahrenheit for the taillight.
Was it important in this testing to account for the temperature variance of the taillight assembly?
Yes, absolutely. And I will.
Yes, next to no one gets notifications from my channel because basically I'm pretty sure I pissed off YouTube. So guys, if you actually do want to see my commentary or my various videos, because I mean, now I'm setting up to do shorts and various other things as well with a little bit of extra effort, head over to the Discord. You'll always get a notification there because I've got my robot that specifically tags everybody.
Well, no, we certainly strive to maintain that. One of the things you actually may see in this photograph on the left are these pellets on the ground, and that is due to the fact during the installation process, one of my colleagues was positioned adjacent to the taillight fixtures, applying a compress of dry ice to help mitigate any heat transfer during the install process.
Let's move on to the next slide. What are we looking at in this overhead view?
This is it's a drone video, so you're going to see the Lexus accelerate from left to right, impacting the hybrid suspended arm in the area where you can see the umbrella.
Can you use your spotlight and orient us? Where are the vehicles and the testing locations?
Yes. So the Lexus is starting here. You will see it accelerate in reverse with the hybrid arm suspended in this area here.
Okay. Well, is this a video or just a still shot?
This is a drone video.
Let's go and play that. Dr. Wolf, is that in real time or slowed down, sped up?
This is in real time.
Okay. Next video, please. What is this?
This is a camera that was mounted on top of the forklift that was suspending the arm.
Is this a still shot or is it a video?
It's a video.
What is the orientation of that arm as it relates to the vehicle that we'll see?
So it will make contact with the taillight, although I will note in this test, ultimately the contact ended up being more of a clip or a side swipe in this test.
Go ahead. Did you see the impact area?
It's quick.
Right. What did you mean when you said more of a side swipe or a clip?
So I think the next couple of videos will help demonstrate that.
Let's move on to the next one. What are we looking at in this video? I'm sorry, this photograph.
So this is going to be a high speed or a slow-mo video. You're going to see the Lexus come in from the right and then move across the screen to the left, and you'll see contact occur between the taillight and the arm.
Okay. Can you explain to the jurors using this video what you meant by more of a side swipe or clip?
Right. So this is where the hand and the wrist are kind of in the area of the quarter panel taillight, and then a portion of the forearm in contact with, I'm sorry, what I previously said, the wrist and the hand in contact with the liftgate portion of the taillight, and then on the forearm is more in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Okay. Can we move to the next slide? And what is this angle?
This is, same test, just a different angle with the high-speed cameras in slow motion.
And this is at 15 miles per hour, correct?
15 miles an hour, correct.
Can you explain to the jurors, given the fact that this is suspended, does that have any impact on the ultimate analysis or reconstruction, rather than being attached to an ATT?
Effectively, mass is mass. So whether we have an arm that is suspended or attached, again, it's the arm is on a joint, right? So the arm can accelerate freely of the rest of the body, right? So if anything, even if it is attached to the body, there may actually be some additional force associated with that, just because there could be more mass attached to it.
Understood. Okay, let's go ahead and play this video. Can we go to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in these three photographs?
So you're looking at, on the left, from left to right, just at contact, and then just after contact, and then post-contact. So as I mentioned, you can see that in this first one at contact, again, we don't have, the hand isn't and the arm aren't positioned as far out on the previous test. And the hand is in the area and the wrist of the liftgate taillight, with part of the forearm in contact with the quarter panel taillight. And as you saw in the video, essentially the arm just kind of moves out of the way of the vehicle as it comes by. Understood.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
This is a photograph of the test vehicle subsequent to the test, depicting the, I'll say, lack of damage to the taillights.
Describe what you did see in terms of damage or lack of damage on the taillight.
There was no damage or fracturing to the taillights.
Describe the orientation of the arm in this particular test that you said was more of a side swipe. What was the orientation of the arm to the taillight in terms of how much?
Wait, what? Stealing EDB shtick? What do you mean? What, did she use the screaming goat? Had no clue.
Of the arm touched the taillight? It's probably a clunky question, but I think you understand it.
I don't know if I could break it down into, I think just qualitatively speaking, like I said, it appears to be the hand and the wrist and kind of the lower portion of the forearm, maybe to the mid forearm or so.
So nothing on the upper arm?
Correct.
Making contact?
Correct, nothing on the upper arm, yes.
Okay. If we can move past this slide and onto the next slide. What is this depicting?
So this is depicting the test taillights of the 15 mile per hour impact into the hybrid arm compared to that of the subject taillight.
Was there any notable damage at all on the on the exemplar taillight following test C at 15 miles an hour?
The only thing there may have been was some very slight abrasions maybe to the plastic, but there certainly was no breaking or fracturing of the lens assembly.
Were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 15 miles per hour?
In this test, it was inconsistent.
Even in a side swipe?
Correct.
Was that testing that we just saw done in accordance with scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies in the area of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight of the subject vehicle consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 15 miles per hour in a side swipe configuration?
It's inconsistent.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Can we move to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in this graph?
So you're looking at the hand acceleration over time. So you can see that because, as you saw in the previous video and slides, the hand initially made contact with the taillight. So that gets accelerated up first. So we're getting peak accelerations in this test for the hand of about 254 Gs. And yes, over a period of about a little over 6 seconds, or 6 milliseconds or so.
What was the arm or the appendage outfitted with to determine the data on this graph?
Right. So if you think back to the lab testing that we did, right, because we didn't have, and again, this is kind of why we did the testing incrementally as we went about it, but in the lab test, we didn't have a way to mount the liftgate assembly to also evaluate that interaction. So when we moved outside the full-scale vehicle testing, we had a liftgate taillight, obviously the full vehicle. So we also instrumented the hand with an accelerometer as well as the forearm. So we were able to measure the acceleration of both the hand and the forearm in these tests.
Can we move to the next slide, please? And what are we looking at here?
So this is the acceleration of the arm. So you can see that it reaches a peak around 5 milliseconds at about, looks like just under 200 Gs.
And the next slide. What's depicted in this graph?
So this is doing, again, the integration of the acceleration data for the hand to determine what speed did the hand get accelerated up to. And you can see that at the onset of this, it's at rest, it's impacted, and then gets up almost to 15 miles an hour in 4 milliseconds. Ultimately does reach about 18 milliseconds. It does reach that 15, but it's nearly at 15 at contact.
Thank you. The next slide, please. And what is this delta V showing us?
So this is showing the change in speed of the arm. And again, because the hand was, and the wrist was more of the central impact to the ATV arm, this ultimately saw less acceleration, therefore less of a change in speed. So at around 6 milliseconds, roughly actually about 1 millisecond after it started to increase in acceleration, it's at about 5 miles per hour.
Is that reflected in the fact that the arm pivoted?
Yes, there's some rotation going on, so it's not translating or accelerating.
Understood. Can we move to the next slide, please? Test D. What was the speed that you undertook in test D as a delta?
So this is a 29 mile per hour impact into the suspended hybrid arm.
Can we move to the next slide?
So they actually went one step further, went 5Ks faster than what they've been saying that was alleged. Okay. I'm guessing this is probably where we see some of the significant damage then.
What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So on the left is my colleague, again, compressing the taillight while we install the upper tail, the liftgate taillight to, again, try to maintain that steady state temperature. Over here on the right is the thermal image of the taillight after the install. So the average temperature of this taillight during the test was approximately 17 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide, please. Staying with test D, what is this depicting?
This is
I didn't see it, Steve, but I have been seeing some commentary by another judge in the area. I'm hoping that she'll be willing to do an interview with me.
A drone video showing a top-down perspective of the test with the Lexus starting on the left-hand part of the screen, accelerating in reverse into the suspended hybrid arm over here at the location of the forklift. Okay,
if we can watch this video, please.
I'm actually really hoping that she'll do the interview with me because she's been, for those of you that are long-term viewers of the channel, she's very vocal about the Harmony case. So, Harmony Montgomery. She's actually written a book on it. So I'm actually extraordinarily intrigued and hopeful that if I reach out, she'll be willing to do an interview. So, anyway, fingers crossed. But she's also been extraordinarily critical of Bev.
Do your next slides show, there you go, the suspended arm. What are we looking at here?
So this is a video camera that was positioned on top of the forklift looking down at the arm. So you'll see the vehicle move from bottom to top as this video plays.
By the way, Dr. Wolf, what are the purple and white lines that we see have predominated? I'm sorry, I was talking.
Sorry.
Okay. What are the purple and white lines that we see?
So those are guidelines to help. I will note that this is kind of like a needle in a haystack. It's very hard to hit this small of a target. So just served as a guideline to reference as we're accelerating rearward into this.
Is this in real time?
This is in real time, yes.
What's the speed that the vehicle is entering?
I know I'm watching it at 1.5 speed, but it makes it look so much funnier. All right, just for clarification's sake, I will slow it down and replay that video because damn it if that wasn't funny.
Slides show, there you go, the suspended arm. What are we looking at here?
So this is a video camera that was positioned on top of the forklift looking down at the arm. So you'll see the vehicle move from bottom to top as this video plays.
By the way, Dr. Wolf, what are the purple and white lines that we see have predominated? I'm sorry, I was talking.
Sorry.
That's okay. What are the purple and white lines that we see?
So those are guidelines to help I will note that this is kind of like a needle in a haystack. It's very hard to hit this small of a target. So just served as a guideline to reference as we're accelerating rearward into this.
Is this in real time?
I really think the fact that they're continuing to talk and just watch the video go over and over, that's got to be sticking in the jury's mind as to how much damage would have actually occurred, because that looked like you can almost feel the from that. That's insane.
Time?
This is in real time, yes.
What's the speed that the vehicle is entering the frame at?
29 miles per hour.
Thank you. What happened to the arm in terms of its suspension?
Now, admittedly, that's what 5 miles an hour faster than they're saying than what the prosecution's alleging. But how the hell do you look at that and go, he didn't have any injuries to his arm? He didn't have any additional injuries to his body if it supposedly hit him in the lower extremities, which we know that it didn't. Keep watching. Will do. Trooper Paul DeMott, he who cannot do math or physics, was right about the pirouette if O'Keefe had been hit, but he wasn't. Yeah.
It actually gets ripped off from the mounting location.
Is there a reason you believe physically that arm was ripped off from the suspension tethers?
Well, certainly there was enough force to break the tie lines to the forklift.
Was there a test value of those tie lines?
I think they were rated at 150 pounds.
What does that suggest in terms of the force that was exerted?
I will say this, though. It definitely clarifies one thing for me. The car could have gotten up to that speed. I was very curious because I still have yet to find a parking lot where I can shift mine into reverse, but now I probably don't need to.
Just before we get to the other testing, the force that was exerted on the arms to tear off the tie lines.
Well, it indicates that the arm saw at least 150 pounds of force.
Okay. Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this video?
So this is going to be a slow motion video. You'll see the Lexus accelerate in reverse, making contact with the arm. And again, this is the 29 mile per hour impact test.
Okay.
No, I'm aware of that because my curiosity was whether or not you could actually even get into that. Whoa, that arm went in. That is out of there.
Next slide, please. And what is this?
This is a video, a high-speed video, so slow motion of Test D at 29 miles per hour into the ATD arm that is suspended. So you'll see the Lexus enter the frame from the right and impact the arm.
Okay.
Yeah, you've actually got the damage to the tail light. But even still, it's not in the same manner that the blood.
Was this strike more reflective of what you were attempting to replicate?
Yes, this was a more central impact to the
I love that they keep stopping the video right before you see the driver.
arm, yes.
Thank you. Next slide, please. And what is this?
So this is a high-speed or slow-motion video depicting the Test D at 29 miles per hour, just a different perspective than the previous video.
Okay.
Hang on. Look at the fucking flex in the panel. Perfect circle position. That. Oh, no. Okay. Now, look, to be honest, that well and truly could be your 46 pieces or whatever else. But look what's not so damaged.
Next slide. And what are we looking at here?
So this is extracted frames from the high-speed video. So starting out left to right, this is roughly at first contact with the majority of the hand, the majority of the forearm in contact with the liftgate taillight, with a portion of the elbow in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Can I stop you right there on that far left frame? Does that fairly replicate what you were attempting to approximate in terms of the orientation of the arm versus the taillight?
Yes, more of a central impact compared to that first test at 15. Yes.
Is that more or less consistent with what you saw in Dr. Welcher's test, where he had his arm in that still shot associated with the geometry of the car?
Sustained.
Is this consistent with what you were trying to replicate after your review of Dr. Welcher's report?
Yes.
Sustained. Can I ask you to?
What were you trying to replicate, or why were you trying to replicate this at the 29-mile-an-hour test in this particular orientation?
We were trying to see, based upon Dr. Welcher's orientation, what happens to the arm in terms of the acceleration and the damage to the taillight at that configuration at contact.
Okay, next slide, please. What are we looking at?
So this is a photograph depicting the damage to the liftgate taillight as well as the quarter panel taillight.
And what do you note in terms of that damage?
So on the liftgate taillight, a significant portion of that thick 5 mm red outer lens is fractured and broken off. The underlying diffusers are still in place. There was a small crack in, I believe it was the upper diffuser here. The quarter panel taillight had the clear section damaged with the outer lens missing, along with some fragments from the outer portion of the red part of the lens.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is another photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight. As I indicated, there is portions of the red lens cover missing. The interior diffusers remained largely intact in this test.
Next slide. What is this side-by-side depicting?
This is showing the results of the 29-mile-per-hour impact test to the test vehicle compared to that of the subject taillight.
Given that orientation of test D, were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether or not the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour?
It was inconsistent.
What's the basis for that opinion, Dr. Wolf?
The results of this test.
And was that testing conducted in accordance with the scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies in the field of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 29 miles per hour? When I say the right rear taillight, I mean of the subject vehicle.
Sustained as to that.
With regard to your opinion concerning whether the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour, do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What is depicted in this graph?
So this is looking at the acceleration of the hand in the 29 mile per hour impact test with peak accelerations close to 800 Gs at 2 milliseconds.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
This is the acceleration of the arm, reaching peak acceleration of about 500 Gs.
You indicated 800 Gs in the last graph. What's the difference? What's the difference in the delta between the 500 and the 800?
Between the hand and the arm?
Understood. Which one suffered or was subject to 800 Gs?
That would be the hand.
And which one was subject to the 500 Gs?
That would be the arm.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
So this is looking at the change in speed. So what speed did the hand get up to as a result of the impact? So we can see that in about 3 milliseconds, the arm is moving nearly at almost 25 miles per hour. And then a little bit later, again, this is still very quick in time, at about 14 milliseconds, it's at about 30 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. What's depicted in this graph?
So this is looking at the change in speed of the arm as a result of the contact. So starting here at about 2 milliseconds, the arm accelerates up to 8 milliseconds. We're at about 35 miles per hour. And this, you may be wondering, why are we getting more speed than what the input was? And that's because you get a phenomenon known as restitution. Basically, there's an elastic collision between the two where you can get almost a bouncing effect. So when you have something that weighs 6,000 pounds striking something that's much, much lighter than that, it can actually cause it to accelerate up to a greater velocity than the impact speed.
Next slide, please. Test E, 24 mile an hour impact test. What is that?
So this is a 24 mile an hour impact test to the ATD arm attached to a test dummy.
Next slide, please. Why did you utilize 24 miles an hour for this test?
So it's my understanding that this is the upper end. There is a triggering event of, I believe it's 1162.2. And I think at the end of that data, the speed is approximately 24 miles per hour. So we did a test at the end point, if you will, in that data set.
What is this photograph showing in terms of the orientation of the arm and the hybrid test dummy, or ATD?
So the orientation is to depict, again, the orientation that Dr. Welcher indicated in his static and dynamic test to show what happens when again, that ATD arm that we had is attached to a test dummy and is struck at 24 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. And what is this?
So this is a thermal image of the taillights just after the install with the average temperature at about just over 33 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide. And what are we looking at?
So you're looking at a top-down drone video with the Lexus here on the left that will accelerate in reverse up to 24 miles an hour, striking the ATD arm.
Let's watch that, please. Next slide. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is a top-down video from atop of the forklift, or where the arm is suspended, attached to the dummy. So you're going to see the vehicle enter from the bottom into going to the top of the screen.
Leaving aside the fact that the Rescue Randy is obviously tied down to the forklift, you tell me how that is anywhere near enough force to launch John onto the grass in front of the flagpole near the hydrant. Triple screaming at home that he's been vindicated. And no blue paint.
Next slide. What is this view?
It's just another perspective. This is a slow motion video where you'll see the Lexus in reverse. I think this one actually has kind of a long build up before it starts here.
And could we go to the next slide, please? And what is this?
So this is a perspective from the high-speed camera, so a slow-motion video with the Lexus reversing into the ATD arm at 24 miles per hour.
Before you play this, Dr. Wolf, I failed to ask this. It may be obvious. After each of the tests, C, D, E, F, were you replacing the taillight with new exemplar taillights that had been temperature accounted for?
Yes, every test had a new set of quarter panel taillights, as well as liftgate taillights. And even in the test where the taillight in the 15 mile an hour test where the taillight was not damaged, we still put on new taillights. We did not repurpose or reuse any of the taillights.
Okay, thank you. If you could play this for us, please.
That one's a little bit more.
Stingy said defense. We hooked sensors to arms, replaced taillights and used the same temperature. Prosecutors. Well, I wore his clothes and became Blue Man Group.
Thank you for the super chest. Oh, hang on. Why didn't that? Should have popped up. My sincere apologies.
Next slide. In this configuration, was the ATD outfitted with the hoodie that you've earlier described?
Yes.
At the time you outfitted the ATD with the hoodie in this configuration before this test E, did you confirm that the sleeve, the right sleeve, was damaged or undamaged?
After this test?
No, before.
Before, it was undamaged before the test.
Okay. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is still frames from the high speed. So starting out on the left here, just at contact. So the forearm making contact with the liftgate taillight, and then the upper part of the forearm and the elbow making contact, a direct hit into the quarter panel taillight. And the middle here is just after contact. And on the right is post contact.
Thank you. Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this video or in this picture?
So this is a overall photograph depicting the taillights subsequent to this test at 24 miles per hour. I will note that there's no damage to the liftgate taillight, and then there is damage to the quarter panel taillight.
Is there any damage to the internal diffusers on this taillight?
So if I go to the next photograph, if I may.
Please.
So you can see here, there is this kind of thicker, it's actually not a crack. So I'm looking at the clear diffuser here with the dots that you see. This line that you see, kind of opaque. I don't know if you've got a laser pointer to.
Donna, may I?
Yes.
Just so there's no confusion. Thank you. So the line right here that's part of the assembly. So that's just a part of how the plastic is molded. There's a very small crack right here in the underlying diffuser, but all of the remaining part of the diffuser in terms of this portion here and here are all intact, and same with this portion of it.
What about the chrome piece that's running between the diffusers?
I don't believe that was damaged during this test, no.
And what about the clear acrylic toward the top left of that taillight housing?
It was partially fractured, but not the entire outer portion of it.
Next slide, please. What is this depicting?
So this is a photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight subsequent to the 24-mile-an-hour impact test with the ATD arm compared to that of the subject taillight.
Based on this test, were you able to reach any opinions and conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 24 miles an hour?
Sustained in that form.
Were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject...
Yeah, Wardrobe, there was a whole bit of hoopla about it. This time around, they're actually employed by the defense. That was part of the reason that Brennan was trying to keep them out, was that there was discussion as to whether or not they'd be allowed to be engaged and who was paid while they were still technically working with the feds. So, but yeah, no, they're definitely hired now. They're definitely for the defense at the moment.
Taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 24 miles per hour.
Based upon the test results, it's inconsistent with striking an arm.
On what do you base that opinion?
I base it upon the test results that I've shown in terms of the video and the data acquisition.
Can you describe that in a little bit more detail?
So during this test, we had the instrumented hybrid arm outstretched from the test dummy with the accelerometer on the hand, the forearm. We had data acquisition on the vehicle, monitoring the speeds of the vehicle. We accelerated that vehicle into the arm at 24 miles an hour to conduct a dynamic impact test to collect data certainly about the acceleration that the arm experienced, but then also make observations about the damage that we observed to the taillight.
Do you hold that opinion that we just discussed to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
And were your tests conducted in accordance with methodologies that are generally accepted in the field of accident reconstruction in this particular test cycle?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this series of photos?
So these are photographs depicting, the test clothing. Again, prior to the test, there were no holes or damage to the sweatshirt. That was the same post-test. We did not see make any observations with respect to any fraying, holes, punctures to the material of the sleeve.
Was there any damage whatsoever observed on the right sleeve of that ATD?
No.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in terms of this graph?
So what you're looking at in this graph is the acceleration of the hand, reaching a peak acceleration just after 10 milliseconds of approximately 435 Gs.
Next slide. What are we looking at here?
This is the acceleration of the arm during this 24 mile an hour impact test, reaching peak Gs of about 300 at 4 milliseconds.
And the next slide. What is this delta V graph showing us?
So this is showing the change in speed of the hand as a result of the impact, ultimately getting up to approximately 24 miles an hour, which again is the impact velocity of the Lexus.
And how fast did it get up to 24 miles an hour?
In probably about 10 milliseconds or less.
Next slide, please. And what is this delta V showing us?
This is showing the change in speed of the arm going to about just over, looks like about 22 miles per hour at about 10 milliseconds. So total window of time of about 8 milliseconds that it took to get up to that 22 mile an hour speed or so.
Understood. And next slide, please. Did you undertake, by the way, another question. On that, when the ATD was oriented in test E, it's an echo, where it was standing with its right arm out, and the impact was on the right arm. What happened to the mass of the body of the ATD?
It rotated.
Was it projected at all off to the side?
No.
Was it projected rearward?
No.
Was that rotation expected based on your experience?
Yes.
What is the 29 mile an hour impact test in test F?
So this was a test that we conducted with what's known as a rescue Randy or a test dummy that was a full-on impact to the right rear corner of the Lexus.
Let's take a look at the next slide, please. With regard to test E, if I could please ask you about that. I'll go back to that test. We're looking at this one. With test E, was that reflective of a direct impact on the arm itself?
Correct, right in the area of the elbow to the quarter panel taillight.
As opposed to a side swipe on the arm?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Did you undertake to test a direct impact on the body of the ATD in this test?
Of the rescue Randy dummy?
Yes.
Yes.
What are we looking at here?
So this is the intended impact configuration with the rescue Randy suspended here by the forklift, and again, kind of in the path of the profile at that right rear corner.
How much does this test dummy weigh?
Approximately 200 pounds.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is a video. We had a little bit of a false start, so our high speeds weren't triggered, but thankfully we were able to pull our surveillance video to get at least an overall video of the test taking place.
Do you have, or let me ask you, did you intend to have high-speed video just like you've had in every other test?
Yes.
What went wrong? Something
just miscommunication between the driver and the rest of the test engineers.
Got it.
So false start.
Okay. Was the taillight housing reassembled for this test?
Yes, it had a preconditioned new set of taillights on it.
And other than the taillight being damaged several times that we've seen, was there any other damage to the rear of that exemplar vehicle?
So can you repeat the question?
Sure. Other than the taillight damage that you rotated through in your testing, C through F, was there any other inherent damage to the the lift gate that existed when the exemplar vehicle was received by you?
When it was received, no. It was in good condition. No defects or damage were noted.
Okay. But what are we going to expect to see in this video?
So in this video, you'll see in the surveillance video, the Lexus will come from the right to left, strike the rescue Randy, and then you'll see the rescue Randy projected and slide on the ground.
Okay. Can you play that one more time, please? Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So this is a extract from our VBox software and data acquisition system. So on the top, you'll see the video. On the bottom is the data. So this is another feed that we had of video. This was triggered. So we do have data from this perspective. So what you'll see is my colleague will move away from the assembly with the dry ice, and then the vehicle will accelerate in reverse.
That was my question. The blue, that's dry ice, gloves?
You don't want to touch dry ice with your bare hands. So it's, he's wearing gloves.
Yeah.
He's capturing the thermal images now.
Next slide, please. And what are we looking at in this?
So these are extracted frames from that video you just saw from the data acquisition system. So on the left here is just before contact between the test dummy and the Lexus. On the right is just at contact.
Next slide, please. And what are we seeing in these series of photos?
So this is obviously during the collision sequence. The body now has loaded into the lift gate and the back window. What you're seeing here is the back window shattering. And this is just a few split second later in time where, again, the body is continuing to move with the vehicle as it's contacted.
Next slide. And what is this?
This depicts the post-impact damage to the rear of the Lexus. As I noted, the rear window is completely shattered. There's deformation and crush to the liftgate section of the vehicle. The bumper step was popped out, and then there was some minor fracturing in the bumper cover at the lower level.
But yeah, sure.
Did you note anything regarding the internal components of the exemplar taillight, even at this direct impact?
So the taillight, as you can see, it blew out the outer lens cover. I believe the part of the clear diffusers were actually still in place. I think the lower one might have been fractured here, but I think the upper one was still in place.
At 29 miles an hour with a direct impact, did the exemplar taillight exhibit the same type of damage to the diffuser as the subject taillight?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
More or less damage in this photo to the diffuser specifically than in the subject taillight?
Well, I think there was more in the subject taillight. As I mentioned, I believe the top diffuser
More
on this
damage?
Correct.
Okay, that was my question. And is there another slide at the on the back end of this one?
That's it.
Okay, we can have the lights. Dr. Wolf, you conducted tests at what miles per hour? Tell me the sequence.
It would be 10 miles per hour, 17 miles per hour, 15 miles per hour, 29 miles per hour, 24 miles per hour, and then a full-on hit at 29 miles per hour.
Regarding all of the tests you conducted, what did you observe with regard to the damage, if any, to the internal components of the quarter panel taillight? And I'm talking about the chrome pieces and the diffusers.
It was less in all of the tested taillights than that of the subject taillight.
Sure.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the right rear taillight of the subject 2021 Lexus is consistent with an impact to John O'Keefe's right arm during a high-speed reversing maneuver?
Sustained in that for Mr. Jackson.
Did you?
Just very quickly, there are 145 of you across 5 different platforms. Hit that like button, just give it a thumbs up, just tickle the keys. Just, you want to.
Reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the right rear taillight of the subject vehicle is consistent or inconsistent with an impact to a right arm during a high-speed reversing maneuver?
It was inconsistent.
What's the basis for that opinion?
All of the test data that we did from the laboratory testing, moving up to full-scale vehicle testing, all of the collected data in terms of the photographs, the observations, all the acceleration data collected. So all of the testing that we've walked through in this PowerPoint, along with certainly that was based upon all generally accepted and peer-reviewed methodologies in the accident reconstruction community.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty based on your experience, training, and education?
Yes.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to relating to the punctures, holes in the hoodie that you saw that was related to John O'Keefe?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion or conclusion as to whether or not the damage that you saw to the hoodie related to John O'Keefe is consistent or inconsistent with a impact from a right rear taillight of the subject SUV?
It was inconsistent.
And what do you base that opinion on?
Based upon all of the impact testing that we did with the closed ATD arm in the laboratory as well as the field.
In any of the testing that you did you ever see taillight pieces cut, puncture, or fray the sleeve of that hoodie?
No.
The exemplar hoodie, I should say.
Correct.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the rear taillight of the subject SUV was involved in a center of mass strike of a pedestrian at a high-speed rearward maneuver?
Yes.
What is your opinion?
That the damage to the subject Lexus is inconsistent with a center of mass hit.
What do you base that opinion on?
The testing that we conducted in that last test that you just saw.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, Dr. Wolf?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Is this a good place for a break, or do you want to get started? Joyce, why don't we let you have your lunch?
Okay, so we'll come back. We'll be back ready to go at 1:30.
All right, support, please.
At most, I've got a half hour left.
All right, so counsel, we have a juror that needs to leave at 3:45, so we're going till 3:45 today. Okay.
All right, so we'll leave. You're taking.
Up today at 3:45. All right, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, so, okay, great. Thank you. All right, do we have the actual? Okay, great. Yep. So,
216.
thank you. All right, Mr. Brennan.
Good afternoon, Dr. Wolf.
Good afternoon.
When you testified in direct, you shared with the jury some of the work that ARCA does. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you had mentioned a couple interesting things, that there had been some work with the Department of Defense.
Correct. Yes.
The work with the Department of Defense, was that during your time or before you got there?
That would have been prior to my employment. Yes.
So when you were telling them about work with the Department of Defense, that really had nothing to do with you. That was ARCA before you began working there.
ARCA as a whole, yes, the work that we do, yes.
Not you.
As I said, I wasn't involved specifically in that project, no.
And you mentioned that you did some stuff for, the company does some things for the NHL.
Yes,
You didn't tell us much more about what you do. There's other things that ARCA does as far as clients, right?
certainly.
Did you share with us that you work for lawyers and law firms?
Yes, we do.
And you do litigation, insurance companies?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any reason why you highlighted the Department of Defense that you don't do and the NHL but didn't share the rest of the stuff with us?
That's just some of the prominent clients that we have.
I see. You provided us a CV, didn't you?
Yes.
And that's like a resume, tells us a little bit about your education experience. You get to highlight some of the things, your accomplishments.
Yes.
You shared with us you've been the director of accident reconstruction at this company, ARCA, since 2017.
No, not since I started.
You started with ARCA in 2017.
Correct, yes.
When did you become the director of accident reconstruction?
I think that would have been in January of 2024, so about a year and a half.
About a year and a half ago?
Yes.
And you received your certification from ACDAR.
Yes.
Did you pass the test on both parts the first time?
I don't recall if it, I think it was I had to retake, I think, the practical section in the afternoon.
Well, you would recall something like that, wouldn't you? Did you pass both parts on the first try?
Like I said, I think it was the second part I had to retake.
Well, this is a pretty important test, isn't it?
Not really.
It's your certification.
It is, but much of the concepts that are covered in it are very elementary.
Well, not so elementary. You had a hard time with part of it, didn't you?
Well, with respect to the portion that I had to retake, it's a practical exam where you have to reconstruct an accident. You have to determine approach angles, departure angles, and it can be very sensitive to those inputs. And unfortunately, if you mess up one of your first angles and you carry out that calculation, then the whole problem is graded wrong, even if you did all the math correct.
So we understand the multiple choice question part, that's the easier part, correct?
I don't know, it's easier, but there is a multiple choice part.
There's a more practical part where you actually have to go out in the field and do assessments, kind of like things that you did today.
You don't go out into the field, no.
And, when did you first take that second part?
I don't recall.
You don't remember when you took it?
No, I don't.
Suffice to say, you took it again,
Correct.
and ultimately you passed both.
Hey, Spanky, just a quick question. How many times did it take you to pass the bar? Just out of curiosity.
Sections of that test?
Yes.
In your CV, you list your schooling, and you list your degrees, don't you?
Yes.
You mentioned some of the things that you focused on in your academic experience, don't you?
Yes.
And you have publications.
Correct.
Recently, you did a publication regarding vehicle control history on Toyotas.
Correct.
Vehicle control history is data that is stored in a vehicle,
Yes.
and Toyota owns Lexus, correct?
Correct.
So you have familiarity with vehicle control history. In fact, you have a publication on it.
Yes.
In your entire resume, you only mention pedestrian collisions, or that you're involved in pedestrian type events 3 times. Is there anything specific in your resume or your publications that show a published accomplishment, for example, in pedestrian collisions? Do you have any publications that have been peer reviewed or published in that area?
No, I don't have any publications in pedestrians.
You write or you note areas of specialty, and you list a bunch: accident reconstruction, human factors, EDR, commercial vehicle, HVEDR, pedestrian bicycle accidents, nighttime visibility, and a number of others, correct?
Correct.
Is there anywhere in your resume that notes particular classes that you've attended and completed regarding pedestrian collisions?
No, I haven't taken any classes.
You haven't taken any classes on pedestrian collisions?
No.
Have you ever taught regarding pedestrian collisions?
No.
Have you ever been a speaker in a presentation about pedestrian collisions?
Yes.
Okay. Is that listed in your resume?
I don't list lectures or presentations, no.
You were asked questions about your involvement in this case. Yes?
Yes.
And you had shared with us that you, at the beginning, were working for a separate party or a third party, you said?
Yes, another agency.
Another agency. And at some point, you came into court and testified last year.
Yes.
And during the time, before you came in and testified, you weren't wholly independent of the defense, were you?
Well, certainly before all of our testing, at the point at which we did all of our testing, report, and analysis, as I mentioned on direct, I didn't know the Commonwealth or the defense in this case.
My question, more precisely, before you testified, before you came into court and gave your testimony, you weren't totally independent from the defense, were you?
No, I mean, I had to communicate with them to be able to determine when to appear for testimony.
So you were communicating with them, yes?
Yes.
And in fact, some of the time that you spent, ARCA actually built the defense lawyer, and they paid that bill, didn't they?
Eventually after the trial, yes.
During that time, you know what a sequestration order is, don't you?
Yes.
Do you think that you're under a sequestration order today?
Yes.
Did you talk to anybody about any of the prior testimony in this case before today?
No.
How'd you get here today?
How did I get here today? I took a car ride over from the hotel.
Who drove you?
It was a driver. I don't know his name.
Who set up the car?
It would have been someone on the defense team.
Was it like a window, like a limo?
It was an SUV.
Was there anybody from the defense with you on the ride over?
There were 3 young ladies in the back seat. I think they might have been interns, and Mr. Woke.
You know?
Mr. Woke, I think it's pronounced. Am I saying it wrong?
Have you discussed anything about this case before your testimony today as far as the trial?
Before today? Yes.
Have you discussed anybody's testimony in this case?
Nobody's testimony, no.
That was different last year, though, because before you testified last year, you did have discussions about testimony, didn't you?
Not with the Commonwealth or the defense, no.
But I'm asking, though, you did have discussions about testimony before you testified last year, right?
Correct, yes.
And you know what a sequestration order is, don't you?
Yes.
After you testified last year, the court ordered you to provide all of your text messages, all your communications with the defense, didn't they?
Yes, earlier this year.
And when you were ordered to provide all of the actual verbatim communications with the defense, did you provide those communications?
Yes, all of the records that I had at the time I provided.
Well, not the records, you know what I'm getting at. Did you provide the communications?
I provided everything I had in my possession, sir.
A text message isn't just a time and date, it's actually substance when you text somebody, isn't there?
Correct.
And when you texted, how many texts do you think you had with the defense?
From what I recall, I think it was around 50 texts that I sent.
It wasn't 100, it was 50.
Well, I think it was around 100 total in terms of back and forth, but it was, I think, 50 that I sent.
And during those texts, communication, conversations, correct?
About logistics, yes.
Did you provide the content of those text messages when you were ordered to by the court?
Well, those text messages spanned from, I guess it would have been April or so of 2024 through May to June of 2024. Ultimately, I think I received the court's order in May of this year, April of this year. So it was a year after the fact, and I had already deleted the text at that point.
How many of those text messages did you delete?
I just swiped the conversation, so it would have been the whole conversation.
Not how you did it. How many of those 100 or so text messages did you delete, sir?
It would have been the whole text chain. I didn't individually delete them. It just, when you swipe, it just deletes the text chain.
After you deleted them, did you go into the deleted and then delete them so they were unavailable?
I don't recall doing that.
Well, you were asked to search your records of the text messages. Did you do a thorough search to see if you still had them or whether you had destroyed them all?
I checked my phone, and I also checked with my phone carrier.
So do you know if they were still under the recently deleted part of your phone, did you go and take that extra step and totally destroy them?
From what I recall, I did not find any of the text messages, no.
Is there any reason why you deleted all of your text communications with the defense?
Well, it's something that I routinely do. I work with attorneys and clients all the time, whether it's appearing for trial or inspections, and I don't have a habit of keeping a text chain that talks about logistics and things. It's just I routinely delete them after that communication was over with, and certainly after the prior proceeding, once it had concluded, there was no reason for me to preserve those.
Okay. And so at some point, you switched from text messages to another form of communication, didn't you?
Yes, earlier this year.
Tell us a little bit about this new form of communication, not text messages.
So Mr. Jackson had indicated that he and his defense team utilized an application known as Signal for their communications amongst their defense team. Ultimately asked if I would also use that application to communicate, which I agreed to.
Is Signal an encrypted app?
It's a secure encrypted app, yes.
It doesn't leave any records, right?
I don't believe so, no.
Well, you're using it. Do you have any records from your Signal use?
I'm going to allow that.
Do you have any records from your Signal use?
I do not, no.
So you know full well that Signal is an encrypted app, leaves no record.
There may be a setting that you can change. I just know that the way that it was set up, there was no record.
Who set yours up to have no record?
I don't know. I think it was default.
Have you ever checked your Signal app to see if you have any record of your communications pursuant to that court order?
Well, I don't have the application anymore, but at the time I did check the application.
Out of all these clients that you've had, how many times or how many clients would you use Signal with?
This was the first time.
Have you used it since with other clients?
I'm sitting here trying not to lose my shit. Because yes, not only is all of this irrelevant, but it's a scare campaign. Spanky's trying to sit there and make it seem as if there is something nefarious with using an app like Signal or, any other encrypted messaging app, which would include things like WhatsApp Business. These are all things that I've personally used with clients at their request as well. And you know what? Sometimes it's just easier to be efficient. Like, honestly, he's just being a dick. Bernice, thank you very much for your 17-month super chat. Yeah, can't really complain. Brain aunt suffered a stroke a few years back, which gave her brain damage, and one day my aunt visited her in the hospital to discover the food pipe was in her trachea. Oh, Jesus.
Not yet, no.
Before you testified last time, at the last proceeding, or should I say when you testified at the last proceeding, kind of like today, you attempted to portray yourself as totally independent, didn't you?
Sustained enough. Now.
When you testified at the prior proceeding, did you attempt to portray yourself as totally independent?
Yes.
The truth is, before you testified, you were communicating with the defense and attempting the best you could to assist their cause, weren't you?
I wouldn't characterize it that way.
So before you testified, you wrote out questions that you thought could help, that you should be asked when you testified, correct?
So something I routinely do before testifying is prepare an outline of topics and questions that would best help be able to get out my opinions and the analysis I undertook, ultimately so that you all have an understanding of what I did.
So I'm asking you a question. You gave the explanation, but you're skipping over the answer to my question. So I'll ask you again. Before you testified, did you write out a list of questions that you wanted to be asked?
Yes.
And when you listed out the questions, you also listed out the answers, didn't you?
A general response. It wouldn't be verbatim to that.
It's verbatim. You list out the answers to each and every one of the questions that you had prepared.
Yes.
So for every question is an answer that you provided so that you could follow a script, so to speak, yes?
I wouldn't characterize it as a script.
One of the questions asks, so not being able to inspect vehicles is something that's not uncommon in your line of work? And your answer, absolutely not. Remember writing that out?
Yes.
And you put a footnote, a comment. And you said, not sure if you want to put this somewhere in direct examination. I have a feeling they are going to argue I didn't personally inspect the vehicles. I had enough information from the material I reviewed, so it wasn't necessary. If you need to show the jury, it doesn't matter in this case. You write that?
Yes.
When you talk about they, I have a feeling they are going to argue I didn't personally inspect the vehicle. Who's they?
That would be the Commonwealth.
And so when you were writing out these questions as is your routine with the answers, is this the mark of independence to you?
Well, I think, again, whether the Commonwealth asked me that question or the defense asked me that question, my response would be the same. It wouldn't change depending on who called me to testify. There are a number of cases, by the time I get involved, the evidence is gone from the roadway, the vehicle is gone. So it's certainly not necessary to inspect the vehicle. And I wanted the jury to have an understanding that because I didn't physically inspect the vehicle, it didn't affect my analysis in the case.
So you think that showed independence?
Yes.
Then you also had another question. Would it be fair to say that because you do a lot of nighttime visibility work, your cases frequently involve pedestrians? Remember that?
Yes.
You said, yes, unfortunately, there is a direct correlation between time of day and pedestrian fatalities. Is that true?
Correct. Yes.
And they happen more often in the day or at night?
More often at night, yes.
Statistically speaking, by the way, this case involves nighttime, doesn't it?
Correct.
Statistically speaking, most of the pedestrian fatalities occur during the evening and night hours. So my specialty in the area of lighting and human factors results in a lot of my cases involving pedestrians. Did you write that?
Yes.
In fact, you testified, you shared that with the jury, didn't you?
Correct. I've testified to that twice last year as well as this year.
And in the notes that you wrote, you shared it last year and this year. Was it an important point to the jury?
I think so, because it helped gave them an understanding, I think, of my background and lighting and human factors. And as I mentioned earlier today, there's a direct correlation between time of day and pedestrian impacts, right? So my specialty in lighting and human factors results in me seeing many, many different types of pedestrian impacts.
So if it was important, why did you include a note? If you don't want me to say this, that's fine. Why did you include a note to the defense that if they didn't want you to say something that you thought was important, you would leave it out?
Well, I think because I didn't want to confuse the jury about the statistic that just because we have inclement weather and dark lighting conditions, it doesn't automatically equal a pedestrian impact, right? We have to look at the evidence and the damage to the vehicle and the injuries to determine whether or not a collision occurred, not the visibility.
So you weren't trying to mislead the jury, you were trying to help them because they wouldn't understand.
What I can't understand is how Hanky thinks that this is going to in any way make any sort of difference. At this point, the jury already knows that this guy was hired by the defense. They're there to be biased towards the defense, to provide a case for the defense. If anything, I feel that this is more damaging because, oh yeah, by the way, back when we were hired by the FBI, we sided with the defense on the basis of our investigation. I really hope that happens.
And something that you're trying to explain? Is that the way you're phrasing this?
I think at the end of the day was to help them understand my background, how it relates to seeing a lot of pedestrian impacts.
Something was important, and it helps the jury get to the truth. Why would you offer to leave it out?
Well, I didn't leave it out.
No, you offered to. You would have if requested. Why did you invite, why did you invite somebody else to interject in your independence and guide you to leave something out? Why would you even provide that invitation to us?
Again, it's because I didn't want them to get hung up on a statistic that just because we have more pedestrian impacts at night and in bad weather, that this alleged incident happened at night under bad weather, to give it more weight, to weight the evidence more because of that statistic. Done? Yes.
If you make a mistake in court under oath, would you take the affirmative step on your own and correct that mistake?
How long?
I would do my best to do that, yes.
Well, when you say do your best, would you do that if you became aware of it?
I'm gonna allow it.
Yes.
Before you testified in a proceeding last year, there was a hearing that you testified in front of Her Honor and other people that were here, correct?
Correct.
I wasn't here.
No.
You were.
Yes.
And you testified about your experience, didn't you?
Correct.
When you
Yes.
were sharing your experience with the court, it was important for the court to have an accurate understanding of what your experience was because it was being evaluated in that hearing, wasn't it?
Correct.
When you testified to the court, you testified that you had been qualified as an expert to testify over 20 times, didn't you?
I don't have the transcript. I believe I said approximately 20 times.
The reality is you hadn't. You've only testified and been qualified 11 times at that point.
Correct. I misunderstood the question. I thought it also encompassed deposition, so I added those two and approximated at 20.
And at some point when you realized you had made a mistake in your testimony to the court, you had a chance to come back when you testified last year and fix it and clarify the record, didn't you?
Correct, which is why I provided a comment with the specific breakdown for clarification.
When you came back and testified under oath the second time, on the record under oath, did you clarify and fix the mistaken testimony that you had provided to state oath?
I don't recall being asked the question. No.
It wasn't what you're being asked. The question is, did you take the affirmative step to fix the misstatements under oath?
No, because a witness can only answer the question that they're asked by either attorney. That's a disingenuous argument, you smug prick.
I'm gonna allow it. Sure.
That's what you do. That one's ridiculous. Oh, 15 minutes. We're in the final countdown. And we're sure as shit not gonna make it.
Many times have been qualified. I misinterpreted your question, which is my fault, but I'm looking at my D&T list with 11 trials, 7 depositions, 18 testimonies total. Not sure if you want to clear it up or just leave it.
Correct. Yes, sir.
You just leave it.
I'm not responsible for asking the question, sir.
There you go.
Do you ever heard the terms confirmation bias?
Yes.
Do you know what confirmation bias is generally?
Generally, yes.
Do you think that you suffer from any confirmation bias in this case?
No.
Do you have any close family that supports one side over the other? Not the facts of the data, but one side over the other.
Close family?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Pretty sure your wife's in the free Karen Reed member group on Facebook, and I'm kind of thinking that's where he's going with this.
Wife?
My wife?
Yes.
I don't really know what her thoughts are on the case.
May I approach?
Yes.
You look at that document. Have you seen that before?
No, I have not.
Never seen that.
No.
Wait a second. You're unaware of anything that may influence you to lean one way or another?
Correct.
When you first took a look at some of the facts in this case, you had some information. Since then, you've received a lot more, haven't you?
Correct, yes.
Part of your testimony today to this jury was to provide opinions that you do not think that the holes in Mr. O'Keefe's clothes are consistent with some type of collision. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
In coming to that opinion, you relied on some of your testing that we saw in those videos, didn't you?
Yes.
And that testing involves a hybrid 3-arm, doesn't it?
Correct, yes.
A hybrid 3-arm is an arm from a crash dummy.
Yes.
That's not the technical name, but that's what it's often referred to.
Yes.
And you and Dr. Retrial have been working together on this case, haven't you?
Yes.
You've discussed ideas and shared thoughts.
Yes.
In fact, you've worked so intimately together, you know some of the things he's going to testify if he comes to testify, you've said many times today, right?
Yes.
And so some of the data that you shared and some of the opinions overlap with each other, wouldn't you say?
So he's going to rely on a lot of that test data, yes.
When you were forming your opinion about holes in clothes and potential abrasions to somebody's skin, all of those tests, all of those that you did, were using a crash test dummy arm, weren't they?
Yes.
In your report, you cite, or Dr. Retrial cites, 3 different sources regarding testing clothing and skin, correct?
I'm not sure.
Well, haven't you read his report?
I've skimmed it, but I don't know what the basis are for his opinions.
Did you see footnotes 24, 25, 26, 24 being skin tissue cutability and its relation to lacerations, severity, indices? Did you read that?
Let's see if there's a foundation.
No, I didn't read that reference.
Did you read 25, the book that is cited, Forensic Pathology, 2nd edition?
I'm going to have you come to sidebar.
You're right. Smug prick just kept going, didn't he?
Let me again ask you about this book that is cited in Dr. Retrial's report. By the way, have you read Dr. Retrial's report?
As I mentioned, I skimmed through it.
So in all of your preparation with Dr. Retrial, you merely skimmed through his report? You didn't take time to read and study it?
Well, none of my opinions are based on work that he did. He's undertaking a completely separate aspect in the analysis.
But that's not the question. The question I asked you was, did you, in working closely with him, take the time to study his report?
As I mentioned, I skimmed it. I didn't read through, as you mentioned, all the references or what he cited. I didn't do that.
Did you read his report?
I did read the report, yes, but I didn't in depth go through each reference and look at what he was citing.
So you read his report?
Yes.
And when you read his report, did you see there were footnotes for a number of different propositions that he made?
I know that there were footnotes in the report, yes.
Well, on the issue of whether or not crash test dummies should be used during experiments as a basis for an opinion of whether abrasions can happen through cloth or an arm, wouldn't that particularly interest you since you were going to come here and testify about it multiple times in front of this jury?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
You knew you were going to come in here and suggest to the jury that you thought that these tests were inconsistent with causing any type of holes in clothing similar to Mr. O'Keefe's or abrasions on his arm. You knew that was going to be part of your opinion today, yes?
Yes.
As part of forming a valid opinion that people can rely upon, wouldn't you want to do as much study as possible on the background for that opinion before you give it to a jury?
I suppose, yes.
Well, you suppose. Don't you think if you come in here as an expert, the jury is relying on your background and education?
Yes.
And they're relying on the fact that you're representing something definitively or with an opinion to a reasonable degree of certainty? You understand that, right?
Yes.
And don't you think when you do that, that it's important that you have proper study and foundation before you just come into court and give an opinion?
Well, I will note that the ATD crash dummy is a generally accepted test device to use for not only assessing occupant forces in motor vehicle crashes, but also to assess impact forces. So that the use of that device is certainly generally accepted.
When you get uncomfortable with my question, you generally tend to answer a different question.
Sustain, Mr. Brennan, next question.
Oh, that's right.
Strike that, jury.
Let me ask you again. Do you think, as an expert, it's important when you come in, and you're going to present an opinion based on science or engineering or whatever you want to do, that you study the basis for that opinion before you give it?
Yes.
When you saw in Dr. Retrial's report references to this very issue about what should be used when you're doing demonstration or study of what can cause tears to clothing, weren't you interested in the basis for those opinions?
Well, again, it was something where Dr. Retrial and I worked together, and we were in agreement that we could utilize the ATD arm clothed.
When you decided to have an opinion that you could use that arm, did you read the book that he cites in support, Forensic Pathology, 2nd edition, Vincent J. DeMaio? Did you read it?
No, I did not.
Did you brief it?
No.
Did you peruse through it at all?
No.
When you decided to come to this agreement that's going to have a foundation for your opinions, did you look at footnote 26, understanding the acute skin injury mechanism caused by player surface contact during soccer, a survey and systematic review? Did you review that?
No, sir.
Have you seen any articles that support the proposition that a hybrid 3 arm of a crash test dummy is appropriate to use when you're trying to provide a foundation for an opinion about whether or not tears can happen to clothing or abrasions to skin? Do you have any support for that in your report?
Well, again, Dr. Retrial is going to be addressing the... You're shaking your head.
So I'm going to let him answer the question first.
So as I mentioned, Dr. Retrial is assessing the injuries to the arm, okay? He indicated to me that we could utilize the hybrid arm to assess the injuries to the arm.
So you have no independent experience or research or knowledge, not Dr. Retrial, you don't have any independent research or science and knowledge to support your idea, your theory, your opinion to this jury about the tears to clothes into the skin.
I was relaying the observations from the testing that we conducted with the ATD. Ultimately, like I said, Dr. Rentschler, it's my understanding that he will testify to the abrasions or the lacerations to the arm.
You've given multiple opinions about this in the jury, didn't you?
Correct, yes.
I'll ask you one more time. Name, I'll ask it this way. Name, other than someone called Dr. Rentschler, name the papers, the studies, or treatise, name the resource material you rely on as the basis for those opinions. That a hypertrophy arm can be used in these type of demonstrations as the basis for that type of opinion.
I certainly, ATD crash test dummies can be used for impact testing, yes.
On impact testing, you're talking about theories of flows, abrasions to skin. I'm asking for the third time. Name one journal, one paper, one study that supports your proposition that you're relying on for the basis of your opinion in terms of jury today. Name one.
I did not cite any in my report, no.
Can you think of one that you didn't cite?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
All I'm going to say is the crash test dummies are damn sight better than a guy painting his arm blue.
You had mentioned on direct examination that when you first started looking at material some time ago, at the beginning, you were unconstrained in the scope of your study. Is that fair to say?
Are we talking about 2023?
Yes, we are.
Okay, yes.
You were unconstrained. You could have done anything you wanted to.
I don't know about anything.
When you said unconstrained, what did that mean?
Well, the agency that retained us didn't ask us to do specific work per se or specific tests.
You didn't do any type of crash test at that time, did you?
Not like was demonstrated today, no.
Instead, you started a working theory that perhaps a glass was thrown at the rear taillight of the defendant's car?
Yes.
Did someone suggest to you that was a theory?
No.
It's just something that you and Dr. Rentschler thought up together?
Based on the evidence that we had, yes.
When you thought up that as a potential theory, that's why you built the potato cannon?
The pressurized cannon, yes.
Pressurized cannon. And you shot a glass at the rear taillight, yes?
Yes.
You determined that at 37 miles per hour, there'd be similar damage?
Yes.
And then you came into court last year, didn't you?
Yes.
And you provided that opinion of consistency to the jury, didn't you?
Yes.
You got up and you said that something to the effect that that speed is consistent with the damage?
Yes.
Now, when you gave that theory last year to the jury, did you know about other evidence in this case? For example, if a glass was thrown at the back of the car, how would the bottom of the glass bounce off the car and land near Mr. O'Keefe's body?
Objection. Ask it differently.
Did you consider, when you came in last year and opined, gave your theory about the glass being thrown at the taillight is consistent with damage, did you think about how if the glass was thrown at the rear taillight, the bottom would have bounced off the vehicle, wherever it was, and landed near Mr. O'Keefe's body?
I'm aware that it was found near his body, yes.
Knowing that it was found near his body, because he knew his body was about 7 or 8 feet off the road, didn't you?
Yes.
Knowing the bottom of the glass, broken glass was found near his body 7 to 8 feet off the road, did you consider if somebody threw a glass and broke that taillight, cross your mind how the bottom of the glass bounced with him through his body impact?
No, I did not analyze that part of it.
If a glass was thrown and bounced off that car, did you consider how the speed would be left in the car?
No, I did not evaluate that.
If the glass was thrown at the car and broke the taillight, did you consider how the debris field would end up on the lawn?
Well, it's my understanding, I think that there were plows that came through that night, so I don't know that where the debris field was eventually found, if that's where it would have been at some point earlier.
Did you ever talk to Lieutenant O'Hara or anybody from the state police to see if the plows went all the way to the side of the yards or just down the middle? Look into that at all?
No, I did not.
Did you give any careful consideration to if the glass was thrown and hit the back of that taillight, how would be a debris field on the front lawn of somebody's yard?
I don't think that was a part of our scope. It was more or less to determine whether or not, if the taillight was impacted by a projectile like a glass, could you get generally consistent damage to that taillight? That was the objective of the test.
So when you came in and testified last time, you weren't considering all of the other evidence that may not support that theory, were you?
I think our objective was to determine whether or not the damage was consistent with an interaction with Mr. John O'Keefe, and could there be another mechanism to cause the taillight to break?
Is there a reason why you were backing off that opinion on direct examination today?
Objection. Sustained.
You weren't fully embracing that theory today, were you?
Objection. I'm going to allow that.
I don't know if I agree with that.
In this case, you provided reports recently.
Yes.
When did you provide your report? Was it April 6th?
April 6th?
Or was it May 6th?
I think it's May 7th,
May
if I'm
7th.
not mistaken.
So you provided a report May 7th, yes?
Correct.
And do you know when this trial started?
Early April?
You provided your PowerPoint. When did you provide your PowerPoint?
I think it would have been Thursday of this week.
Well, it wasn't last week.
Sorry,
Probably-
maybe Wednesday.
probably
Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday. Is that fair?
Yes.
In looking at pedestrian accidents, it's important to try, if you can, understand the exact positioning of the body, isn't it?
If a collision occurred, yes.
And if a collision occurred, you can't always identify the exact position of the body, can you?
No, oftentimes it can be very difficult, yes.
You would want to know if it is a collision between a car and a pedestrian, whether the person was fully impacted or it was a clipping type incident. Wouldn't you want to know that if you could?
That would certainly affect the trajectory, yes.
And you would want to know, if you could, the body posture, whether the person was standing up straight or crouching.
If a collision occurred, yes.
Whether they were turning or standing straight or they had their arm out. That's helpful information, isn't it?
It can be, but when we're talking about how quickly this impact duration is, right? If you recall back to the PowerPoint, where we're talking about a 10 millisecond window. So however the body is positioned at contact, that's how it's positioned. It's not going to be able to have any significant movement or change in orientation in that 10 millisecond window.
The position of the body can change the trajectory of the person who's hit, can it?
So can you repeat the question?
Positioning of the body, the way they position that can change the trajectory if you're hit after they hit, can it?
It can, yes.
Whether they're moving towards the vehicle or away from it could affect the trajectory, couldn't it?
If they have some relative velocity, yeah.
Trying to determine the point of impact when you're looking at a scene, it's important to do trajectory studies to know where the point of impact is.
If you're going to utilize studies that look at projection of pedestrians when you're contacted at the center of gravity and you get projected some distance, you can rely on those studies, but you have to have an understanding of where the point of impact is and where the point of rest is.
Don't have the point of impact. If you don't know the point of impact, if you don't know the exact body position, that creates variables in your studies, doesn't it?
Well, again, talking about those studies, they're not applicable when you are contacting, for instance, just a limb or you don't have a center of gravity hit. Those when you're talking about how far will a pedestrian get projected, if it's like a forward projection or what's known as like a wrap projection where the pedestrian wraps onto the hood and then becomes decoupled, those studies are applicable there. But when you're talking about where there's minimal overlap between the body and the center of gravity, then you can't utilize those studies.
So you would not want to know what the point of impact is?
In this particular case, no, I don't think it would be helpful.
You would not want to know the body position?
I don't think that it would be helpful in determining, because again, we have to start with, is it consistent with a collision?
So you would not want to know the body position. That's what you're telling us. You don't want to know that.
Well, if the evidence indicates that the contact is inconsistent, then that's kind of where the reconstruction stops. You can't go to a point of impact and a point of rest if there was no contact.
So you don't want to know the body position.
Objection. Can you answer that?
I don't understand this question, Your Honor.
When you're doing studies, you don't want to know the body position?
Objection. Can you answer that, Dr. Wolf?
Again, it depends on the type of impact. For the alleged contact in this case, you can't rely on those studies about impact location and point of rest. They're not applicable to
Let's
that.
talk about studies. As far as data, information, you as the person doing tests, would you want to know the body positioning?
Objection. This is not assumption. And this time we'll get an answer and that'll be it. You got an answer every single time. Can you answer that, Dr. Wolf?
I feel like I've answered it the best I can, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
You don't like that question?
Objection. This is the strike. Jurors disregard.
Okay. When you were doing these video demonstrations, was it important to be as accurate as possible?
Yes.
Data changes if information changes, right?
I'm not sure I understand the
That's a
question.
tough question. You want to be precise as you can and ultimately having a conclusion regarding data, don't you?
Yes.
Could I have PowerPoint page 12, please? Now look at force on the bottom. The first letter F signifies force, correct?
Correct.
And the last two letters, MA, signifies mass, yes?
Correct.
That's a very important part of that equation, isn't it?
Yes.
If you change the mass, it can change the whole analysis, can't it?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Let me make it more simple. When you did these tests, you chose an arm from a hybrid 3 crash dummy, didn't you?
Yes.
Take that down, Ms. Gilman. Now, when you made that choice, you knew that John O'Keefe's arm, based on the statistics and his weight of being 216 pounds, you knew that his arm weight would be 11.8 pounds, didn't you?
Yes.
And you knew that he was 6'1" tall.
Yes.
When you decided to choose an arm, in this case, you didn't choose the arm closest to his weight, did you?
It was representative enough, yes.
It was representative enough.
It was close enough, yes, sir.
Close enough. Wouldn't you want to get an arm most closely related to his actual weight?
I don't know that you can have custom-made ATDs.
You probably can't custom make them, but they have one that's 12 pounds. You know that, don't you?
Are you referring to the 95th percentile?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
So there's a 12-pound arm. Mr. O'Keefe's is 11.86 according to the statistics. You know that, right?
Yes.
You looked it up.
Yes.
You didn't tell us that on direct, though, did you?
I don't believe I was asked that.
No. Instead of choosing the 12-pound arm, which is 0.12 difference, you chose a much lesser weight, didn't you?
It was about 10 pounds, yes.
No, it wasn't about 10 pounds. It was less than 10 pounds. Let's be exact. You're a scientist. Let's be as precise as possible when we're talking about data. It was less than 10 pounds, wasn't it?
I think according to the spec sheet, I think it's 9.4 pounds total.
How about 9.38? You keep coming up a little bit. 9.38 pounds.
Sustained in that
May I
point.
approach?
Yes.
showing you a photograph. Is that a photograph of your materials in this case?
Yes.
In that photograph, it shows the arm that you used in your studies, doesn't it?
Correct.
And it shows that that arm weighs 9.38 pounds, doesn't it?
Yes.
And that is less than the 11.86 pounds of Mr. O'Keefe's arm, yes?
Correct. Yes.
You didn't put that photograph in your PowerPoint to make it clear to everybody you were using an arm that was a much lesser weight, were you?
No, I didn't put that photograph.
Like, move this to evidence, please.
Okay. Any objections, Mr. Jackson?
Of course, Commissioner, I'd like to show this to the jury.
Just give it, submit it, let court reporter mark it.
217.
Yes, now you can play it.
This is the arm that you used in all of your videos, right?
Correct. Yes.
And you can see, could you zoom in, Ms. Gilman, on the weight? 9.38 pounds.
Yes.
There's a bigger difference between 9.38 and 11.86 than there is 12 and 11.86, isn't there?
Correct. Yes.
So when you do the math, and have you done the math before on this? When you do the math, it's 26% difference, isn't it?
In terms of more force?
No, mass, weight, 26% difference,
Okay.
right?
I'm going to trust you. Yeah.
Well, do you have a calculator?
I do.
Can you do it?
Sure.
Okay. And before you do that, you took this from Mr. O'Keefe's 6'1". You used a crash test dummy what is the height on it?
Well, the ATD, I believe, is 5'7". The Rescue Randy, I think, is 6 feet tall.
We'll talk about the Rescue Randy later. We have questions about Randy. But let's talk about this. 5'9". You said 5'7". It's actually 5'9".
Sorry, 5'9", yes.
And it's 170 pounds?
171, I believe.
Mr. O'Keefe's not 170 pounds.
No, not his whole body.
He wasn't 5'9".
Correct.
Okay. So when you do the math and you take the 9.38 pounds based on the 171 pound doll, and you look at the percentage, doesn't it come out to 5.48% total body weight?
Yes.
Okay. And so the difference, when you look at it, it's a 26.3% difference from his actual weight, isn't it?
Correct. Yes.
And so I'm probably at the 6th grade level on this, but isn't it very basic that the more something weighs, the slower something has to go to have damage? And if something weighs less, the other part that collides, the force has to go faster.
The force is going to be greater if the mass is greater.
So if you throw a 5-pound rock into a window, you can throw it slower, cause the same damage as a 2-pound rock.
I don't know if I agree with that analogy.
You agree that based on 26% difference, in order to actually be accurate, to be specific, to be scientific, you then have to adjust the speeds that you presented on the demonstrations, and you have to reduce the speed by 26%.
I don't agree with that.
Don't agree with that. You think that having a lighter arm, so what you're telling us is having a lighter arm would cause the exact same amount of damage to the taillight studies as a heavier arm. Is that what you're telling us?
Well, if you look at, for instance, the 29-mile-an-hour impact test, that's significantly more kinetic energy. So the momentum of a 6,000-pound vehicle moving at 24 miles an hour, 29 miles an hour, that's going to overcome whatever the mass is that it's hitting at that point.
You're sidestepping my question.
Sustained. Ask a question, Mr. Brennan. Just ask a question. No more.
My question is, are you telling us that having a lighter arm does not impact the damage in these tests as opposed to using the heavier arm?
Certainly not in the field test, no.
And so you disagree that when you look at the weights of those arms, do you disagree there's a 26.3% difference?
Yes.
You disagree?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Do you agree there was a 26.3% difference in the arm weight that you used opposed to John O'Keefe?
Yes, the hybrid arm compared to Mr. O'Keefe's arm, yes.
And you are denying that there needs to be an adjustment to your calculation because the mass MA is different. You're denying that.
I think, again, if you're, and this is something Dr. Rentschler, I believe, will...
No, I want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to Dr. Rentschler.
Well, because when you're addressing the forces for injury and the mechanisms for injury, right, you would account for the difference in the weight.
So you're saying that it makes no difference that you use an arm that is 26% lighter. Is that what you're saying, Coach?
No, I don't think it would have made a significant difference, especially if you look at, for instance, if you're looking at the 95th percentile hand and the 50th percentile hand, they both weigh 1.25 pounds. They're the exact same weight. There's about a pound more roughly in the forearm and a pound more distributed in the upper arm.
That's not my question. It's not whether it's significant or not. I'm asking you, are you saying under oath right now that a 26.3% difference had no impact on the calculations in that study? It would have no impact at all.
The calculations, yes, but in terms of the damage, no, I don't think that 1 pound difference, when we're talking about something that's 6,000 pounds, striking something that's, quite frankly, whether it's 9.4 or it's 11 something, it's not, you're not going to get a difference in the damage.
Why don't you have a 3-pound arm up there?
Well, I think that's unreasonable, sir.
What's that?
I think that's unreasonable.
What's the difference? It's a 6,000-pound car, according to you. What's the difference between 26% and 40%?
Well, I don't even know that I agree with your percentage because, again, you're accounting for the whole part of the arm that goes up to here, which we did not strike that part.
It's how much lighter, 2 pounds, and what, how many ounces?
Sorry, what was your
How
question?
much lighter is it, the arm that you used?
In terms of a percentage?
No, in terms of weight. The weight. 9.38.
Right.
Mr. O'Keefe, 11.86, right?
2.48.
And you're saying that makes no difference? None.
Not in the observed damage at those speeds, no.
Why didn't you use a 5-pound arm, sir?
I'm sorry, what was your
Why
question?
didn't you use a 5-pound arm?
Again, I don't know that they make a 5-pound ATD arm.
You didn't tell us when you did these studies. You didn't disclose in your PowerPoint that you used an arm that was much lighter than Mr. O'Keefe's arm, did you?
I don't know that it was, I didn't give the weight in the presentation, no.
Let's take a look at some of your testing. The first one was at 10 miles per hour, test A. You remember that test, right?
Yes.
Now, 10 miles per hour, if you had taken 26% off, would you agree it would change the actual speed from 10 miles per hour to 7.67 miles per hour? If you did out the math, if you did it specifically, accurately, precisely, would you agree, using the wrong arm, you make the deductions and the calculations, that 10 mile per hour test would actually be 7.67 miles per hour? Would you agree with that?
I would allow that.
No, because again, the arm is going to get accelerated up to that speed. So that the speed would still, that mass would still be accelerated up to 10 miles per hour. Same thing in the vehicle testing. It's going to be, given that weight difference, it's going to be accelerated up to that speed.
Now, can we see the video of test A, please? Okay. Now, this is your study, 10 miles per hour, you claim, with a arm that is 9.38 pounds, correct?
Correct.
Mr. O'Keefe, 11.86 pounds, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now, this light on the end of this, you're trying to replicate the light on the back of a Lexus?
Correct.
If a Lexus at 6,000 pounds hits a person, the Lexus isn't stopping automatically, is it?
No, it would move at a common velocity with the arm.
It would continue to push forward through the arm, yes?
It may, yes.
And the arm can push into the light before the body turns, yes?
I don't know that I agree with that, no.
If the light on the Lexus, not at this speed, but if the light on the Lexus was broken or breaks and it hits the arm, it's not going to bounce off the arm, it's going to push through, isn't it?
It's going to move at a common velocity with the arm.
And that will move not only the arm, it will move the person's body, won't it?
It may, yes.
It may push the body, it may throw the body.
I don't know about throw.
And the light, if broken, will continue to press against the arm until there's separation. Isn't that fair to say?
It could, in some instances, again, it could bounce.
It could, because it's not always the same. It's a dynamic process, isn't it?
It is dynamic,
You
yes.
could do the test many times and get very different results, couldn't you?
I don't know that I agree with that.
Would you get the same result every time?
I think you would certainly get similar results.
Every time.
If you had the exact same impact location and speeds, yes.
So that's my point. What if the impact location moved a little bit? Could it change?
Well, is Dr. Welcher changing? I don't know if, again, I was relying on what he provided.
This
in
is
his
not
report.
Dr. Welcher. I'm asking you. No, it's not.
Okay, so jurors, disregard that exchange between counsel. Next question.
If the body position changed, you may get a different result. Isn't that fair to say?
Did that motherfucker just say, no, it's not argumentative? God, he's a piece of shit. Oh, shit. I'm way over time. No, you know what? We'll go to quarter 2.
I was going after what Dr. Welcher had represented in his report analysis. So we did testing to analyze his orientation that he had demonstrated in his report.
You don't like that question either?
Sustained.
If the body position changed, it could change the result. True?
I don't know what you mean by body position. Do you mean the whole body, the arm? What part of the body?
Okay, let's start with the arm. If the arm position changes, it could change the results, couldn't it?
Well, I'm not aware of any other orientation that Dr. Welcher provided in his analysis report as to alternative orientations.
If the arm position changed, could it change the result?
Yes, I mean, I presume if you don't have your arm on the taillight, then yes, you'll probably get a different result.
What if it's bent in a different way? Could that change the result?
Again, I haven't reviewed anything that indicates that there was a different orientation that Dr. Welcher suggested.
You're a scientist, right? You can think. I'm asking you. Just a general question over here. If you bend the arm, could it change the result?
It could.
Thank you. Okay. When a pedestrian is struck, they are not held stationary on a harness, are they?
No.
In this case, the crash test dummy is on a harness,
Yes, he's supported.
strapped
Yes.
by his hips or pelvis.
Yes.
That's not real life. That's not how a pedestrian is usually when they're hit, right? They're not strapped to a harness, are they?
No, and again, the purpose of this test was to evaluate the arm. We're not looking at the whole body here with this test.
And when we talk about injuries, part of injuries is not just the impact, it's the drag, in this case, on the car, isn't it?
It could be, yes.
But when you put the dummy on a harness, restricting or restraining its movement, it is not going to replicate hitting somebody in their movements, including the drag, is it?
I don't know that I agree with that, because it will replicate. Again, we're talking about that impact pulse of 10 milliseconds. It will replicate that. And that's ultimately what we're after, is what's happening in that 10 millisecond window in terms of the contact and the damage and the acceleration.
I know that's what you're after. What I'm asking you is, when you end it, when the light stops, unlike a Lexus, and the dummy is stationary, unlike a person, it affects the aftermath, the drag and the push after, doesn't it?
Yes, the kinematics would be different, likely, if it's not restrained like that.
In real life, pedestrian usually is not restrained, are they?
Correct.
In real life, a 6,000-pound Lexus, upon contact with an arm, doesn't usually stop on a dime, does it?
No.
Can I have the photo from test A, please? And so there is no break, but there's a crack in this light that was a result of this experiment where this light hits that restrained dummy, yes?
Yes.
And this is at 10 miles per hour in your world, and 7.67 if you take off the 26% weight.
Sustain us to that point.
We can move to test B, please. Now, this test B, a similar test, it has the same limitations, doesn't it? This dummy is restrained at the pelvis.
Yes.
Could you show the video, please? There's two videos. We see the first one. And was the dummy restrained by its head as well?
Yes.
Was its arm restrained in any way?
It was tethered, but it was free to move.
This test you have at 17 miles per hour with the arm that's 9.38 pounds. Mr. O'Keefe, 11.86 pound arm. If you consider that 26% difference, wouldn't it be fair to say that this test, rather than replicate 17 miles per hour, would actually replicate 12.6 miles per hour?
No, can you answer that?
Not the way it's phrased, no.
And so looking at this test, test B, which you say is 17 miles per hour, can you do a calculation for the 26% difference, or is that something that you don't think is fair?
I don't think that'd be a fair way to characterize it. Again, if no matter what the mass is there, if you're accelerating it, if you're impacting at 17, that arm is going to move at 17.
Well, not just the movement, the damage. If this arm was 5 pounds, do you think the test would have the same exact result?
If it's 5 pounds?
Yes.
Probably would be less damage.
It'd be less damage. So to get this amount of damage, you would have to increase the weight, right?
Sorry, what was your question?
To get this amount of damage, you couldn't use a 5 pound arm. There'd be less damage with a 5 pound arm.
Correct.
Right, because the less weight you use, the less damage at that speed. That's basically how it works.
Correct.
Your argument?
Okay. So in this test, if we could run that back again, you have a restrained dummy at the hips and the head. There's no follow through of the light or the body that's attached to that arm, correct? And at this speed, you can see the shards of taillight. You can see them move, can't you?
When you say move, you mean just
Not stationary.
Yeah, I mean, they're moving from the taillight as they break.
Detached from the taillight.
Correct, they're
That
broken.
could create a debris field, yes?
Yes.
And you can see them floating in the air, some of them actually floating and then touching the sweater. Do you see that?
Possibly some of it might be, again, some of that polyurethane foam.
Yeah, some might be. And why don't we play it again so we can see clearly? Some might be taillight shards too, right? That black object spinning, that's not poly foam, is it?
No, it would not be.
That'd be taillight shard, right?
Correct.
And so even at this speed, you can see in this type of collision, there is significant, bless you, significant amount of taillight shards that are broken from the taillight and spewed into the air, yes?
Well, I think on the one of the slides I had, I think I showed the fragments that were left. And from what I recall, I think there was 4 pieces from the taillight, from the lens.
If you could put that back a little so Dr. Wolf can see it again, to the point of the collision. Even at this speed, go ahead. Stop. You can see pieces, large, small, medium, maybe even microscopic, are now breaking off from that taillight and being lifted into the air, aren't they?
Yes, there are pieces coming off.
If we can go to test C, please. Now, in test C, you actually use only an arm. Isn't that fair to say?
Correct.
You don't use a body or a crash test dummy.
No.
In fact, this is not the 12-pound arm either. This is the 9.38 pound arm.
Correct.
And when you do this test, you have the arm basically just an object suspended in the air, isn't it?
Yes.
And you said, I think on direct examination, I think you said that this is the same as if it was on the dummy. Is that your testimony?
Well, in terms of, again, the amount of weight that would be interacting with the taillight, whether it's attached to the dummy or not, what's in direct contact is going to be the same.
Well, the fact that it's just floating up in the sky like that, it's very different than if it was attached to a person or a dummy, isn't it?
In terms of how it moves immediately after the impact, yes.
Not just how it moves, as far as the impact. Isn't it different?
I don't know that I agree with that.
Okay. Well, wouldn't you say that in addition to the arm, if you had another 200 plus pounds being held down by gravity, that would affect the force that's acting on the arm?
Well, the arm again is going to be accelerated, but the center of mass of the body is not going to see that acceleration.
Did you testify before in this case about the importance of the full body and gravity?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Have you testified before in this case about the effect of gravity and the full force of a body as opposed to just an arm?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember whether you thought it important on a previous time you testified that there was significance to the arm would be attached to a 200+ pound body and there was the issue of gravity that would affect force?
From what I recall, I think that had to deal with whether or not the pedestrian would be projected based upon an interaction with the arm or a full-on center of gravity, right? When we're only hitting the arm, we're not hitting the CG of the body.
You did test B, and you claimed it was at 17 miles per hour, test B.
Correct.
And we saw the damage. This is at 15 miles per hour, test C. Could you play this, please? It might be a delay, so you could fast forward a little bit, please. How many times do you think that arm spun around?
Oh shit! It's actually live. So peeps, I'm gonna go and get some sleep. What I will do, however, is I will send. Oh, actually, no. You know what, you guys, because I'll have to link this to my own to put it into the playlist for the stream. So anyway, as always, thank you for sticking around and keeping me company. Please remember, you are not a piece of shit. You have value in your society, unlike Spanky. And I'll see you all tomorrow for the drive. I'll pick this up in the morning and then get on to what is going on live. But stay healthy, wealthy, wise, people, and I'll catch you all shortly. Peace, peeps.
And again, on your way out, please do me the favor and hit the like and subscribe button if you're so inclined. It costs nothing. It's absolutely free. And we'll be friends forever. Bye now.
This shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks. Don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Nope. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Alright then. I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'ma get the fuck up out of here. Fuck this shit, I'm out.